Hi, Paul Hefty here. I want to talk about new teaching methods in sport. One of the things I like to always say is it's not what you do, but how you do it. So coaches need to be great teachers. So we're going to talk about different components of that, principles of teaching sport for any type of activity. We'll look at technical skills, tactical skills, and then come up with a plan for teaching, and then finish up with specifically looking at the games approach and some application with that. Let's take a look. Real quick, just want to introduce myself. I'm an instructor at Penn State University in the Knies department, specifically teaching coaching principles and ethics courses along with business and leadership in the health industry. Also do sport internships, have a partnership with Sports Performance in the athletics department, and then do outreach education with High School Football Consulting. There's my website. Before coming to Penn State in 2011, I was a D3 college football coach for 20 plus years, and I've always taught coaching courses at the college and university level, and then lastly run private camps, designed over 50 of those since 1995. So what, why, and how the teaching of sport. What we're doing here is we're going to look at some new principles and specifically talk about a games approach. We're going to look also then at new technical and tactical skill development. You'll hear me refer to an 80-20 rule, meaning what has changed is 80% of your practice with most sports need to involve 80% tactical skill development and 20% technical, and it's kind of flipped from what traditionally has been done. Why we're doing this, as I said before, coaches need to be great teachers. And one of the things we have to do here is have a plan for teaching. And that gives us a chance for success. And if we look at legal duties, there's 14 of those by the National Federation of High School Sports, and the number one is a legal duty. Number one is to plan. How we're going to do this, we're going to apply some of these modern methods of teaching that we'll go over today, and then we'll specifically look at ways to apply it to the games approach. So first off, principles of teaching sport. What we're looking to do here is evolve as a coach and as a teacher. And again, one of the things we're going to use specifically is some sports science to make a difference in that. So first off, we want to make sure we understand what we mean by skills. And it's real simple. It's just to execute those techniques required for your sport. Conceptual teaching, we're going to talk a lot about, and that's where you empower the athlete to practice these tactical skills. And we'll get into this more. Tactical skills basically are decision making or problem solving that you're asking the athlete to do in competition. So we're going to focus on the big picture here and use whole concept movements. All right, technical skills. I love doing this. I've got two young daughters, and you're going to see two different techniques here. I'll play the video. Nella will go first using kind of a ballet technique, and Sylvia go next with a rock and roll. It also is kind of a games, introduction to the games approach, kind of free play. But the point being is there's many different ways or techniques to use in your sport. You need to pick which technical skills you want to focus on and then teach those specifically. Let's take a look here.
Sylvia and Nella, rock jumping. Sylvia has an interesting technique. But here is Nella doing ballet rock hopping. I love the concentration, and then Sylvie dancing in the background. Good job, Nell. Da 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 da! And now Sylvie.
Giving the dog a bone, giving the dog a bone.
Come on, rock and roll, Sylvie. Oh, yeah, that's it. Good job, Sil. Nice technique.
Hey,
Yeah.
do my way. Do some opera for us. I did it my way.
Sylvie's got an interesting technique.
I want your
It's all her own.
So you can see there's a different way to do it, but again, it's those specific skills or techniques you pick. When we get into tactical skills, as I mentioned, this is the decisions and the actions of the players against that opposing teams or players. It's not strategy we're talking here. We're talking about what we call game sense, and that's that decision-making ability you need in sports. Real simple examples is basketball, that point guard making decisions where and when to pass. Maybe it's a football player, quarterback, making those decisions, which and what receiver to throw to, bracketing a defender, and so forth. Concept teaching, as we mentioned then, is the power to form or understand ideas. It's that big picture. And what we want to do here is make sure we try to teach that big picture concept approach at the start. That way we know what the others are doing around us, and it enables and empowers the athlete now to have some more ownership and hopefully then better understand those tactical decision-making skills they've got to develop. So we'll use a holistic approach. I'm sure most of you have done this, either experienced as an athlete or done it as a teacher. But again, a reminder of doing whole, then break it down into parts, and then back to that whole teaching progression. So that holistic approach, again, is helping the athletes understand the game and what's going on all around them. You don't want to assume that athletes just understand, again, these basic terms and the communication you're going to use in your teaching. Good example is when I work with 9th graders, we just assumed, like with football, terms like contain, stretch, spacing, cutback, and we have to actually explain those just like we started giving definitions of technical and tactical skills. So again, it's how we make decisions, why, what, and when. And as I mentioned, reads for the quarterback. A great one is everybody thinks a screen pass is very simple because it's traveling a short distance. There's no real reading of defenders, but it's very similar to a basketball player going in the lane, doing a layup. The angle of where you're shooting it, how that fits around the different actions of the defenders changes every time, so it's not so simple. Again, if we want that athlete to make quality decisions, we have to enable and empower them, not just in the games, but in practice so that they actually physically experience it versus just telling them. Key research piece here shows that athletes on average need 24 successful rehearsals or repetitions before they have any chance of it sticking with them in a highly competitive environment. So I use two examples here. First is a quarterback being told to just throw the ball out of bounds. Unless he's physically done this, again, successfully with several repetitions, we can't expect him to actually do that in a highly competitive environment. Second one is I love using this with the number of reps an athlete's needs, is I'll show you a diagram where we have a 4 verticals pass game, and assuming that quarterback's going to complete it 50% of the time, with 5 different receivers, that means he has to throw that pass 250 times at one play before it starts to stick with all 5 receivers. So you have to help them understand it by letting them experience it, and that means there's a process to this. So we're going to have a lot of mistakes at the beginning, but that's how that growth and development happens. So again, we want to empower your athletes, and the way you do that is through well-organized lesson plans, teaching progressions, and as you can see now, repetitions. So here's a visual of that 4 verticals pass play I was talking about. You can see we've got the 4 receivers just running straight down the field. The 5th is the running back checking down in the middle. Looks really simple, but you can see again, being able to make quality decisions, we need to throw this pass 250 times one play. So again, whole part whole, we want to do the big picture. They need to see it, they need to feel it, need to experience it, And this is how you can design and teach it. So a good example is I like to actually do what I call a classroom on the field. Film is really impactful to see it, but most people are tactile learners. They need to actually walk through it and feel it at the same time. So we actually would walk through almost like a video, big picture of everything, so you can see it and everybody getting a rep to actually walk through it. Then you're going to go ahead and break it down into your parts. This is the details. So one of the things we like to do there is focus on your cue words so that it's consistent with the communication of the athletes and can be direct. Last then is we go back to that whole picture, and this is where we can start to do the games approach, where now we would put things together in more of a game-like or competitive environment, a little bit controlled. But some things we like to do here now is match the skill levels of the athletes going against each other. So good versus that traditional 1 versus 2. We like to then start to include situations, game-like situations, instead of just running the plays. And then another thing we do is you want to think about safety. Again, if it's a contact type sport, you can do this controlled big picture action by staying on your feet is a real simple way to keep it safe and sound. Last term we want to look at here for a foundation is what we call the games approach. So first off, most of us have experienced or taught using the traditional approach where we focus on technical skills, what a lot of us call fundamentals, which is sound, but that becomes the majority of how you're teaching, and then you go right into big picture, and you're just expecting them to perform and make quality decisions with just telling them versus letting them experience it. Remember the 80-20 rule is we want to make sure they get skill development on tactile decision making 80% of the time before you get into those performance type environments. The games approach does that. What we're going to do is set up our drills and our teaching. We still would have 20% of technical skill development, but then 80% we can still break it into the parts and work on decision making that they're going to have to do in game type environments, more of like a sandlot or free play type situation. So it's learning through the game like practice and activities and to create an enjoyable learning or situational learning.